Hello and welcome. You're watching Reset India and I am Vishal Dahiya. Here in this show, we talk about those sectors where a lot of resetting is required, restructuring. And by that, I mean steps to be taken by the government in terms of policy tweaks and also the industry to make use of those policy tweaks and go a step further ahead to ensure that it adds to India's growing economy. Now, today we're going to focus on an issue which further gives a boost to one of the very crucial sectors, that is manufacturing, and that is setting up of DFI, which is Development Finance Institution. We'll talk about the whys and hows of this particular institution, why the government has decided to go ahead and put in place an institution like this, how it will help the industry, specifically the manufacturing sector, and what are the contours of this entire plan. We'll have two experts as well with us. But before we move ahead, let us give you a bit of an idea about what exactly is DFI, that's Development Finance Institution. Now, the Cabinet has approved the bill for Development Finance Institution to be set up, and the proposal is for 20,000 crore rupees. Also, 7,000 projects have been identified at an investment of approximately 111 lakh crore rupees. The tax benefit will be for at least 10 years, as has been proposed in this particular bill. Also, 50% of non-official directors will be there in DFI, that is Development Finance Institution. And the government will issue securities to reduce the cost of the funds. That's quite significant and important there. Initial 100% government ownership will be gradually reduced to 26%, giving the industry a bit of a stake there. Aim to boost demand through infrastructure push. That is the real motive for setting up DFI. So these are the key finer points, but we'll try and understand how exactly will it work and how will it help the industry. And for more on this, we're joined by two distinguished panelists today with us. Mr. Sandeep Agarwal is joining us. He's chairman of the Industry Affairs Committee in PhD Chamber. Also, we have Professor Aman Agarwal, director of Indian Institute of Finance. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to our show. And let me begin with you, Professor Aman Agarwal. Let's start by understanding what exactly is DFI, Development Finance Institution, and why is it that we have the need for such an institution?
I'm very happy that Rajesh Satbhai is hosting this program on DFI. The Development Finance Institutions have played a very critical and pivotal role from the very beginning of the setup of the India with the creation of the industrial sector, because when it comes to large sectors or large infrastructure setups, it is very difficult for any private enterprise to go about setting up or financing some of those projects. And that's where the need for the DFIs came into picture. We have seen some of the DFIs which have existed in the past, like the IFCI, which was set up in 1948, the IDBI, which was set up in 1964, the NABARD and the Exim Bank, which was set up in 1982, then the IIBI in 1972, and the SIDBI in 1990. We have seen also the change from the IFCI, the IDBI, and even the HDFC, which have actually been converted into commercial banks in due course, and reverse mergers were done almost about a decade and a half back, 15 or 20 years back, changing their role from developmental financial institutions into commercial banks or banking financial institutions.
Okay.
Now, the role of DFIs, which exists today in the last 10, 15 years, is quite different from what it used to be in the 60s, 70s, or 48 or 64, when the earlier DFIs were set up, where the whole holding was primarily of the government, the functioning and the provision of funds was by the government. But here, the new DFI, which is being set up, like the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development Act, which is being proposed and which has been, the bill has been passed, is actually not only looking at the DFIs as creating funds from within the resources of the country or from the government exchequer, but also actually bringing in funds from developmental institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, the ADB, the IADB, the OECD, and other international agencies like them, plus also various country funds which come through the form of pension funds and others which have been coming into a country, could be rerouted through DFIs. And the role and functionality of these DFIs will also differ. Instead of just funding industrial projects or large government infrastructure projects, this will be primarily to boost long-term key projects, which could be both in the framework of public-private partnership, government or private sector. Plus, the funds would be, as I said, raised from multiple sources to go about funding.
Okay.
And as you also rightly pointed out, the holding initially would be 100% by the government of India, but in due course will be reduced, which was never the case with developmental institutions like we see NABARD or Exim Bank or even SIDBI, as a matter of fact, where the 100% holding is still of the government. Now, this is something where a market mechanism is being created, structures are being created, where there is a framework of bringing in accountability, bringing in due diligence, and trying to deliver the kind of requirements which a country like India has, keeping in mind that most of these development projects in the past have shown empirical evidence of inducing growth with employment. And there have been large projects like the road, the railways, the airports, the highways which are being constructed, the smart city projects which are being there. Now, some of these are small examples of what is being proposed and would be taken up. But these are projects which actually induce a large amount of population of this country to be engaged, both unskilled workers and skilled workers, more so with unskilled workers than with skilled workers. But it's a mixed bag of both the kind of institutional frameworks. And this is where we are going to see a new framework, a new setup of DFIs as against what we saw in the past. And I'm very happy that the government of India is contributing about 20,000 lakh crores in the initial phase itself in terms of projecting and bringing in funds on the table for the DFI to come in place and take this new journey to a $5 trillion, I would say a $10 trillion in the next 10 years going forward, as the government is projecting to be built up in due course.
Okay, definitely. So that's the sum up on in terms of what exactly can be expected. And as Professor Aman Agarwal pointed out, inducing growth with obviously generation of employment, special focus on the infrastructure push here. Let me bring in Mr. Sandeep Agarwal here as well. Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, from industry's point of view, if we have to understand the need of having a DFI right now and with a special focus on the manufacturing sector, giving a push to the demand there, how do you see these contours which we've been talking about, which are there in public domain of this new DFI?
Vishalji, I can assure you that the government intentions are excellent, and these intentions are going to convert into real demand for the goods, because capital goods industry obviously gets its demands from the investment in the infrastructure sector. And we must see that there is a huge shortage of money as capital by the industry. Indians do not have the capital. When we see US or Japan or China, the funds are coming either from the government or from the pension funds, etc. From the sovereign funds, the money is coming in. Now, with this coming of the development financial institutions, we believe that apart from this 20,000 crores which is coming from the government against the REITs and the InvITs, these financial institutions can get funds, very, very low cost funds from the international pension funds and other sovereign funds, because the money in the international market is going around at 0% interest rate, whereas Indian industry and gets to pay 6 to 8% and 10%, and if the ratings are not good, God forbid, 18%. So what we need to do is that build the confidence of the retail investors who also want to come in into investing into these projects. They need to have a solid backing of a DFI as an anchor investor in the project. And I'm sure that these funds which will come in are going to make sure that this 111 lakh crore, the India infrastructure pipeline, will be a success. Otherwise, I don't see success happening. Where will be the funds coming from? So the government is doing all the right things, the right moves are there, and this money, also, industry goes through a cyclical thing. As there were earlier different development financial institutions, some to cater to the sick or the weak units, some to cater for infrastructure, some for for different purposes. Now, today also that requirement is there.
Okay.
And when we see that when a industry like steel industry, like even the power generation companies, they are all going through a bad phase. Now, when we are, does that mean that the asset value has eroded? No, the asset value is already there. Only problem is they do not have the funds to pay on the due dates.
Okay.
Every month, every quarter, every year. So what I hear is that for the purpose of DFIs, that instead of 3 months, it will be 180 days. But what I believe is that for infrastructure, because if the cash flows have reduced and the asset values are available, the companies should not be shown as failing.
Okay.
And that can only happen when DFIs are investing.
Okay.
They
Okay.
can structure the loans in such a way.
Okay, so clearly, the baseline there, as you're pointing out, Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, is that it's all about funds. It's all about capital investment right now in the market. And this entire effort, as both of you are pointing out, is to go ahead and ensure that unhindered flow of capital to the industry. Specifically, we're talking about the manufacturing sector here. But we'd like to understand, Professor Aman Agarwal, when this, institution is in place, DFI, how will it work around with all these contours here to ensure that seamless flow of capital to the industry and also setting an accountability there?
I think you raised a very pertinent question, Vishal. The question here is of the fact that we induce accountability. But how does the government go about doing that? Fortunately, even during the time of COVID in 2020, we saw the foreign exchange reserves go up. We saw a lot of foreign direct investment coming into the tune of about $5 billion per month was still coming into India. And that was something clearly an evidence of the fact that the world market and the world institutions are looking at investing in India and making it a place for investment, for growth and development for themselves and for the country. Now, that was a clear indication which we could see despite the fact of a scenario we had been observing throughout the year. As you know, large number of economies had a negative dip, no growth, large number of economies had withdrawn. Then we also saw the fact that there was new rules and regulations being created for foreign direct investment given the China issue which came into the picture, where the government tried to bring it on the nail and create a framework. Now, this is where the DFI will come into a place wherein large number of such funds would actually get routed to DFI, keeping a proper check on those channels, keeping a proper balance on those channels as to where these coming in. And also, in my opinion, large amount of disinvestment projects which the government is looking at, wanting to create, would also get routed now to the DFI. Because you see, when you invite private investors to come in and take large stakes, like the Air India, or you talk about the railways, or you talk about LIC, or other organizations where you're talking about private investors come in and take over some of your assets, no private investor or private institutional investor has actually the respective resources to go about taking them because they're large ticket assets. Now, given that, there will be an indirect flow of some of these DFI which is going to be created to go into that. So there will be an independence, there will be an accountability to those funds, a return on investment which is expected and giving to the market mechanism, but an indirect, again, a control of the government wherein they will be able to observe that the funds which they're actually disinvesting in as assets are not taken for a ride, because these are public properties. These are properties which have been raised through public funds, through the exchequer, and as a result, more importance needs to be given. And the question which was being raised again and again when this investment was being done would again come to a halt because the involvement of the DFI would take place. And as I said, there is no dearth of evidence, whether it was SIDBI which introduced the small-scale industries in this country, how it boosted the small-scale industries, which are now called the SMEs or the MSMEs today, but earlier were referred to as the small-scale industries all through 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And we also saw the IDBI, the way they funded large number of projects, large number of big institutional investors, whether it is real estate, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is power, any sector you may look at, were actually financed by developmental financial institutions. and IFCI and others. So given these known facts, we can certainly see the direct benefits which people are going to get through the DFI. And this is not long term again. This is not something we're looking at 5-year plan or 10-year plan. We're looking at these frameworks being created within a span of a year and a half, because many of these projects are already in the pipeline, as my colleague said, that these projects are there and they're looking at the funds. Now, the DFI would help route these funds, because many times, most of the international funds or even countries, when they want to invest their pension funds into a country, the biggest problem is of a guarantor. How do they guarantee that these funds will be refunded? Fortunately, India has enjoyed a very good reputation in the last 20-25 years, where we have never defaulted per se. Plus the fact that since there will be a government guarantee in these DFIs, as a result, there will be more sustainability, and these funds will be easily able to come into the market and venture into the framework, into the live projects and projects which are yet to go ahead tomorrow.
Okay.
And hence, we will see these projects coming to life and people getting employment and sustainability. And as I said, because this DFI, they're going to reduce the government holding from almost from 100% to 26% over the time, will induce the accountability, given the fact that they're looking at NGOs, charitable institutions, public institutions to come over and take over on the board. And as you also mentioned in your presentation, 50% of the board members of the DFI would be non-official directors, which is a very important step, in my opinion, that the government has taken, despite the fact that they have 100% funding being given as of today.
Okay. So that's all about ensuring accountability there as well. Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, your views from the industry's perspective on that accountability part and the way the government is setting up the mechanism there, just to ensure, obviously industry at the end of the day wants, capital, wants the fund to flow, and the government is taking a step ahead, saying that yes, we are willing to put our best foot forward. We are willing to stand guarantee. We are putting in place an institution. We're giving it a seed money so that more funds can be drawn. That particular institution will become the leeway for that, that particular fund there, those funds there. But the accountability part has to be there. How does industry feel about all these steps which are being put in place there in terms of 50% non-official directors, also ensuring bringing down from 100% to 26%? At the end of the day, the money which comes in has to be utilized properly.
What the government is trying to do is bringing in the independent directors, bringing accountability through that method, that it is not only people who are under the thumb of the government to decide on the funding, but it is industry experts who will be sitting on the boards of these financial institutions and making sure correct decisions are made. I believe India has the capability. There are enough people in India who has the expertise to disperse funds for such developmental projects. It is the lacking of the institution which we are facing. And we must also...
Okay.
There are always possibilities that certain projects may fail. They may fail because some of unforeseen circumstances happens, some regulatory frameworks change, demand patterns change, and that hit also. And the idea should not be able to blame anybody and everybody in the sector where the money has been funded to. So as it happened in the steel sector, suddenly cheap imports from China poured in. And if India would have given zero duty benefit to China, as initially it was happening, then obviously the Indian industry was failing. And the total mayhem which happened was not a mistake of the industry. So what we say is that sometimes projects do fail.
We could hear you till the point you're talking about the steel industry. So from there onwards, if you could, I believe you wanted to conclude what you're saying on that part. Please continue.
Okay. So as I said, that the steel industry went down just because something unforeseen happened. There was huge dumping of steel from China into India, and China increased their capacity eightfold. So they became by far the biggest producer of steel in the world, and they were ready to buy iron ore from India and coal from India and Australia and Indonesia, and still sell cheap steel around
Okay.
the world, including India. So basically, when big muscled companies with government support wants to kill an industry, nothing can be done because they come with deep pockets. So therefore, our infrastructure projects also need that kind of deep funding.
And
that
this is an
either
effort just to
government supports it with law.
counter such moves.
Yes, yeah.
This
to
is an
counter
effort
such
just to
moves.
counter such moves.
Exactly. So that is why the DFI has come into place, why the government has thought of it in first place.
Okay.
That we need to, you cannot always counter them with policy, because government is also, the hands are tied. We are a part of WTO, we are part of various bilateral and multilateral agreements. So every time, it is not the government can pass a order that, okay, this import we will ban, or we'll put penalties on import of this, or we'll increase the taxes on these goods. Sometimes
Definitely.
you cannot do that. So but you cannot let lakhs of crores of your assets go waste when such kind of problems occur. And these are cyclical in nature. We must understand that companies who have deep pockets, they are able to wade through the down cycle
Okay.
because of the funding available to them. And if Indian companies and Indian infrastructure is not able to wade through that slump, then that asset is lost forever. Nobody uses it. It goes for scrap.
Definitely, this is
And then
these are situations, Mr.
probably
Sandeep Agarwal,
India-
wherein both, as you're pointing out, both the government and the industry will have to work together, and these are the efforts of the government, obviously trying to lend an helping hand to the industry to take benefit of this situation. Let's take a quick concluding comment from Professor Aman Agarwal here as well. Professor Agarwal, let's talk about the and let's also conclude with the longer period here, looking at the future. How does institutions like DFI help us in the long run?
I'm happy again. Program for this would be very profitable for a country because, as I said, the two key concerns for any economy is growth and employment. And DFIs actually empower the setup which actually boosts growth as well as employment, bringing in sustainability for tomorrow. But the more important thing, as I pointed out, when we see the European DFI or when we see the BRICS Bank, which has come into place, the default ratios in the last 10, 15 years have gone down. We have now forward contracts which actually take care of foreign exchange risk exposures. We have contracts which actually take care of other inflationary risk pressures. And as a result, now the institutional investors, when they invest into a country like India or other countries through pension funds they invest, or other high net worth investors who want to invest and be part of the growth, prosperity, and bring prosperity to themselves, are able to do that in a more secure and better manner and keeping things under control. And I think this is something which is very important. But the way we saw foreign direct investment came in between the last 7-8 years, before 2013, 14, 15, and the way the kind of havoc was created both in the banking and the financial institutional framework can now be controlled and restrained, and more regulated, more better, more structured growth could be attained. And as I said, the Prime Minister's target of the $5 trillion economy is achievable with the plantation of the DFI going forward, because we have seen success stories in Europe, we've seen success stories with BRIC, we have seen success stories with some of the other DFIs created in some of the rest of the world, as against the DFIs which existed in the past, including some of them which exist today like NABARD or Exim Bank or SIDBI. The success story will be much better. And as I said, the fruits in this plant will start coming from within a year to year and a half, as against earlier DFIs, which used to take at least minimum of 5 years. As my colleague from the industry knows, 5 to 10 years is minimum layout period for any kind of growth sentiment coming in, or profitability coming in, or huge jumps in industry coming in. But this DFI framework, which channel in current projects, forthcoming projects, plus this investment plan which the government of India has, inducing more sustainability and stability with equitable growth for people at large and for almost the whole country, and not only a specific region per se.
Okay, there it is. Thank you so much, Professor Aman Agarwal, as well as Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, for your views on this very, very important aspect, that is the proposed framework of DFI, that is Development Finance Institution. Why and hows of it, the contours, and also how it will help not only in the short run, but also in the long-term perspective there. And as our panelists were pointing out, nothing is impossible if there are efforts put in, hard work put in, and also with the right attitude there. We'll come back again with a different aspect of India's economy and a sector which both the government and the industry are trying to restructure, reset with policy tweaks and efforts out there. Keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.